Before we start, it's important to say, this script was created so you can hear the story as if Antony himself were telling you his life, answering a direct question about his journey. This is how we want you to feel every word, as if you're face to face with him, sitting in an interview, listening to his life lesson in his own voice. How he dreamed, believed, and never gave up. Today you'll get to know the moving story of Antony, a journey of pain, overcoming, and examples worth more than gold. Staying until the end of this video might be the most valuable 12 minutes of your life. Scales may fall from your eyes, and from today on, you may see life in a completely different way from anything you've ever seen before, and all of this will add up to help your life thrive in every area. This channel is new and we need your support. Help us grow, share, like, and subscribe. I'm Antony, and for a long time I was a prisoner of my own choices, not just because of the chains of drug trafficking, but because of an inner voice that told me I didn't deserve anything better. I grew up believing that being strong meant enduring everything. That turned me into someone hard, distrustful, and empty inside. When my mother died, I lost more than just shelter, I lost my reference point. I started confusing presence with possession, affection with control. The fights at my uncle's house taught me that shouting was language and silence was punishment. I shut myself off, built up anger, and sought approval in places where love didn't exist, only power and fear. In that search, I stopped looking at myself with compassion. Forgiving myself seemed like a privilege for others, never for me. I remember the day I woke up in the hallway of a motel and didn't even know my own name. Jason, who I called a friend, laughed while I searched for money for another dose. I saw Rick point the gun with a calmness that froze me. And it was right there, in that poorly planned exchange, that everything collapsed: jail, fever, and the raw, naked feeling that I had become my own worst enemy. Prison didn't cure me, it exposed me. Alone, sick, I felt for the first time the weight of lacking self-love. But it was exactly at that rock bottom that the greatest lesson of my life was born: no one is condemned to be a prisoner forever. The next chapter of my story proves that even the deepest wounds can teach you how to start over. But it didn't all end there. At the peak of my pain, a book left by a volunteer in the visiting room fell into my hands. It wasn't a success manual, it was a collection of forgiveness letters. One small sentence stuck with me: you may not have chosen the beginning, but you can choose the next chapter. That sparked a flame. I began writing little notes to myself, identifying the small lies I told myself about my worth. It was slow. There were relapses, sleepless nights, apologies trembling in my throat. But in the silence of my cell, I learned to listen. And never stop believing that the dream born within me, that I could rise from the bottom, was possible, and that I would find the strength to never give up. I had friends who walked similar paths and showed me shortcuts to humanity. I'll tell you about Mateus, who believed vulnerability was weakness, until he lost his daughter to an overdose, and through grief, sought therapy. He taught me that crying is cleaning the wound, not tearing it open. I'll tell you about Sandra, a warrior mother who tried to save her husband from addiction and ended up forgetting to save herself. When she learned to say no out of self-love, her family found peace again. And there's Paulo's story. He traded the gang for a carpentry course in prison. By creating things with his hands, he found purpose and self-respect. My transformation didn't happen overnight, it was built through small gestures, repeated with effort and pain. For an ex-convict, every step is a battle against prejudice and your own wounds. It's a fight so hard that many can't take it and end up going back to the abyss they tried to escape. That's the harsh reality. Change demands more than just willpower, it demands persistence when everything seems against you. Many give up halfway through the battle and return to the cycle of crime. But my life lesson proves that, even among falls and scars, there's always a way out for those who believe they deserve to write a new chapter. When I got out of prison, I realized freedom wasn't the end of the fight, it was the beginning of a different war. The chain was no longer around my ankle, but in people's suspicious glances. I knocked on doors looking for a job, and even before I finished my sentence, the answer was always the same: "We'll call you." But they never did. They didn't see my effort to start over, they only saw the label, ex-criminal. That prejudice ate away at me inside. I kept wondering how many times I'd have to pay for the same guilt. Sometimes, it felt easier to go back to the old path, because at least there was a kind of acceptance there, even if cruel. But then I'd remember the forgiveness letters that saved me in my cell. I'd remember every note I wrote saying, "I deserve another chance." And that's what kept me standing. In relationships, the pain wasn't any less. I met women who believed in my transformation, who saw in me a heart willing to love. But almost always, resistance came from their families. Parents, siblings, neighbors, everyone looked at me like a threat. It was as if my past was a shadow covering any true feeling. It hurt to hear, "He's not good for you." Many times I cried alone, wondering if love was a privilege I'd never have. It was in that emptiness, between closed doors and interrupted loves, that I realized the real battle wasn't against the past, but against the belief that I didn't deserve a future. And that's where the turning point of my life began. Still, there were people who reached out to me. Simple folks, but with strong values, who believed in what I could become, not what I had been. A man named Alberto, owner of a small workshop, decided to give me a chance. He said, "If you mess up, learn. If you fall, get back up. Here, you'll be treated like a man, not a label." That job wasn't just work, it was dignity. Every bolt I tightened was a way to rebuild my self-worth. Over time, I managed to stabilize my life. And with that stability, I found true love. I married a woman who wasn't afraid of my past. She saw in me a partner, a friend, someone who wanted to build, not destroy. Together, we had children, and through them, I understood the value of my transformation. Being a father showed me the responsibility of teaching by example, honesty, respect, resilience. Everything I once had to learn through pain, I now wanted to give them through care. Even so, I never forgot where I came from. Looking back was no longer a source of shame, but of purpose. I started visiting rehab centers, giving talks in schools, and listening to stories from young people living through the same struggles that once trapped me. I always tell them, I'm not talking from books, I'm talking from life. I've been where you are. If I could change, you can too. Today, my mission is to be a bridge. A bridge between those who made mistakes and those who believe there's no way back. A bridge between prejudice and hope. I know I won't change the whole world, but if I can save just one kid from waking up in a motel hallway not knowing his own name, then it was all worth it. What I learned is simple but deep: society may try to bury you in your past, but only you can decide whether you stay trapped there. Injustice will exist, rejection will hurt, but real value is born when you refuse to give up on yourself. This is the life lesson I carry with me: no one is condemned to be defined only by their mistakes. There's always a next chapter, and only you can choose to write it. Antony, the lost boy, no longer exists. The man who remains is proof that self-love, the right allies, and the courage to keep going can turn scars into wings. And today, watching my children smile, I know, every struggle was worth it. Antony's story may seem far from your reality, marked by prison, prejudice, and daily battles to prove he deserved a second chance. But deep down, what it reveals is something we all carry: the invisible chains that hold us back. You may have never lived what he lived, but who hasn't felt suffocated by their own mistakes, by other people's judgments, or by the feeling of not being good enough? Antony believed his fate was already written, that he'd forever be the ex-convict. But life showed him he didn't have to be held hostage by the past. And here's where the life lesson comes in: no matter how different the problems are, the essence of the struggle is the same. You may not be trying to break free from a criminal record, but you might be overcoming heartbreak, beating an illness, rebuilding self-esteem after a loss, or simply believing there's still a future when everything feels dark. The prejudice Antony faced might resemble the devaluation you felt at some point, at work, at home, or even from people who were supposed to support you. And the loneliness he experienced isn't so different from the kind that creeps in when you realize no one seems to understand the pain you carry in silence. But if there's one thing Antony's journey teaches us, it's that change doesn't happen all at once. It begins with small gestures, repeated every day, until they become a new path. He found people who believed in him, and you can find them too, or you can be that person for yourself, believing you deserve to try again. So don't limit yourself by thinking, his life was harder than mine, or my problem has no solution. Every battle is unique, but they all carry the same opportunity, the chance to choose your next chapter. Just like Antony, you too can look back without shame and forward with hope. In the end, the message is simple: you are not defined by your mistakes, your falls, or the labels others put on you. What defines you is the courage to rise and write your own story. And it all starts with self-love, the key that opens doors, heals wounds, and turns every fresh start into an opportunity to thrive. If this story touched you, remember, our channel is new, and we need your help to keep bringing life lessons like Antony's. Share, leave a like, and subscribe now. Together, we can reach even more people who need to hear this message.